Hey, I'm Emma. Welcome to Emma's Betrayal Stories now. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories aren't rushed, they're the kind you sit with. Today's story comes with an update and my own personal opinions throughout the story. Let me know in the comments if you agree or see it differently. Let's begin.
My ex tried to come back after I found success, so I made sure she knew she lost her chance. The first time I saw Rowan again, my stomach did this stupid little flip like it hadn't gotten the memo that we were done, that she'd left, that she'd watched me drown, and called it space. I was standing near the entrance of my studio, one hand still smudged with graphite because I'd been fixing a last-minute print issue, and there she was in the doorway, like she'd always belonged there. Black coat, neat hair, that familiar careful makeup that made her look like she'd never cried in her life. She smiled when she saw me, not big, not apologetic, just practiced. Like she'd rehearsed it in her car. I didn't move at first. I could hear the hum of the lights overhead, the low murmur of my team in the next room, the distant clink of glasses from the small launch event we were hosting. My throat went dry so fast it felt like someone had dusted it with flour. Rowan took one step inside and said my name softly, like it was a secret she still had the right to. Layla. I gripped the edge of the reception desk until my fingers ached. "Why are you here?" came out of my mouth before I could make it polite. She blinked, then lifted her chin like she'd expected me to be emotional, not blunt. "Can we talk?" she asked, and her eyes flicked past me at the banner on the wall. My company name in clean letters, the little sold-out sticker on the RSVP board, the photographer adjusting his lens like this was worth documenting. I watched her take it in, and I saw it, the tiny shift in her expression when she realized I hadn't just survived without her. I'd grown into something she could brag about. It was a Tuesday night when Rowan ended things the first time, 2 years ago, raining hard enough that the gutters outside our apartment sounded like they were boiling. We'd been together for 3 years, and for most of that time I'd been the one with the steady job, the one who remembered bills and groceries and her mother's birthday. Rowan was charming and ambitious and always figuring it out, which sounded romantic until you're the person paying the rent while your partner finds her path in a way that always seems to involve your money and your patience. I'm not saying she used me like some cartoon villain.
It was more subtle than that.
She made me feel like I should be grateful she chose me. Like her love was a limited edition item I'd managed to snag before anyone else did. The breakup itself didn't happen with screaming. It happened with Rowan sitting on the edge of the couch, twisting her ring. Yes, she wore a ring I bought her, even though we weren't married, because she liked the symbolism and saying, "I think you're holding me back." I remember the exact way the lamp light hit the side of her face, the way her voice sounded too calm, like she'd already decided I was a problem to solve. I asked what she meant, and she said, "You're always stressed. Always working. You don't dream big. You're safe." That last word, safe, landed like an insult. I told her I was working because someone had to. She shrugged and said, "I need someone who inspires me." Then she asked if she could stay at her friend Cass's place for a while to clear her head. She didn't say sorry. She didn't ask how I'd manage. She kissed my forehead like I was a cousin at Christmas and walked out into the rain. I didn't realize she'd taken my favorite hoodie until the next day. The months after she left were the kind of quiet that feels loud. I'd come home to a living room that still smelled faintly like her perfume and stare at the blank space where her shoes used to be by the door. I'd open the fridge and feel angry at myself for only having what I needed, milk, eggs, spinach, because Rowan always made the fridge look like life was happening. I cried in small places. In the shower, in the elevator, in the car parked outside the grocery store because I couldn't remember which cereal she liked and then remembered it didn't matter. My friends, bless them, did what friends do. They brought wine. They brought takeout. They said things like, "You'll be okay," and "She didn't deserve you," and I nodded because it was easier than explaining that the worst part wasn't that she didn't deserve me. The worst part was how much I'd wanted her to. And then, slowly, I started building the thing that had been sitting in my notes app for years. I'm a designer, but not the artsy kind people imagine when they picture creative. I'm the kind who loves systems. I love making messy things make sense. I started freelancing at night. I built branding kits for small businesses, then websites, then full visual systems. I got picky about clients. I stopped undercharging. I learned how to say no without apologizing. A year later, I formed an actual studio with two other women I trusted, Nina and Priya, and we got our first big contract with a local chain that wanted a total rebrand. That contract paid off my credit card debt and bought me a new laptop that didn't sound like it was dying every time I opened Photoshop. Rowan didn't know any of this. Not because I hid it exactly, but because she never asked. She texted me twice after the breakup. Once to ask if she'd left a necklace in the bathroom drawer. Once to tell me she'd changed her mind about the couch and wanted her half of the money back even though I'd paid for most of it. I sent the necklace to Cass's place. I sent the money because I wanted the thread cut clean. She replied, thanks, with a period. That was it. So standing there in my studio doorway now, watching Rowan take in my success like she was browsing a store display, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not hate, not even anger. More like clarity. The kind you get when you stop arguing with reality. Layla, she said again, softer, and she took another step. I didn't know you were doing all of this. I let out a short laugh, because the alternative was screaming. You didn't know because you didn't care, I said. You didn't have to. Her eyes tightened. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked. My voice sounded steady, and that surprised me. You left. You didn't check in. You asked for money and a necklace. And now you show up at my launch night. Rowan glanced over my shoulder again, like she couldn't stop. I could practically see her brain tallying the details. The tidy reception area, the framed prints, the guests in the next room holding drinks, the photographer, the confidence. She was reading my life like a headline. I'm proud of you, she said, and the words felt so wrong in her mouth that my skin prickled. Why? I asked. Because now it's impressive enough to attach yourself to? Her cheeks flushed. That's not what this is. What is it then? I said, and I hated how my heart still wanted an answer that would make the past softer. Rowan swallowed. I made a mistake, she said. I thought I needed something else. I thought I needed someone who... She stopped herself, and I could tell she was about to repeat the inspire me line like it was a personality trait, not a cruelty. I miss you, she said instead, and her eyes shone like she'd practiced that too. Behind me, Nina's voice floated from the main room. Layla, the press guy's here. You ready? I didn't look away from Rowan. No, I called back. Give me 2 minutes. Rowan's gaze sharpened at the word press. Press, she echoed, like she couldn't help herself. I took a breath. My fingers were still gripping the desk. I forced them to release one by one, like unclenching a fist you didn't realize you'd made. You can't come in, I said. Rowan blinked. I'm not here to cause a scene. I'm not taking the risk, I said. This is my night. My work. My team. My life. You don't get to walk back in when it's convenient. Her face shifted. Hurt first, then offense. Convenient, she repeated. Yes, I said. Because you're not here to talk about what you did. You're here because you saw the headline. Rowan's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since she arrived, her confidence faltered. I didn't see a headline, she said quickly. Cass told me. She said you were doing really well. Of course. Cass. The friend Rowan moved in with right after leaving me. Cass, who used to accidentally leave Rowan's favorite snacks in our apartment fridge like she was marking territory. Cass, who always hugged Rowan a fraction too long. The Cass who never liked me. I tilted my head. So Cass told you I'm doing well, and your first instinct is to show up here. Rowan's eyes flashed. I wanted to see you. Then text me, I said. Like a normal person. Don't show up at my workplace like I'm a surprise party. Rowan stepped closer, lowering her voice. Layla, please. I've been thinking about you for months. Funny, I said. I've been working for months. That landed. She flinched just a little. I didn't feel proud of that line, but I didn't take it back either. Rowan's voice turned sharp. So, What? You're punishing me?
Ich zerrte her.
Setting boundaries isn't punishment, I said. It's what you do when you learn from pain. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, but there was nowhere to put the argument.
Because what could she say?
That I owed her a second chance? That her timing was pure? That she'd loved me the whole time, but just forgot to act like it? Rowan's eyes flicked toward the main room again. Are you seeing someone? She asked, too casual. I felt a weird heat rise in my face. Not because I was caught, but because she still thought she had a right to ask. That's none of your business, I said. Her jaw tightened. So you have. I didn't answer. Silence is an answer when you refuse to lie. Rowan's shoulders lifted like she was bracing herself. I'm not asking you to take me back tonight, she said, changing tactics. I just want to talk. Coffee. 10 minutes. You used to be the person I could always. Don't, I said softly, and my throat tightened. Don't use nostalgia like it's a key. Her eyes went wide, then glossy. I'm trying, she whispered, and for a split second she looked real, like a person, not a performance. And that was the cruelest part, because if she'd been cruel and smug the whole time, this would be easy. I held her gaze. Rowan, I said, you left because I was safe. You wanted someone who made you feel something bigger. Now you're standing here because you're hoping my life is big enough to borrow. Her face crumpled, and I saw anger spark behind it. You're acting like you're above me, she snapped. I shook my head. I'm acting like I learned, I said. There's a difference. Nina appeared behind me, phone in hand, eyes flicking between us. Everything okay? She asked, her tone polite but guarded in that way women get when they sense a threat. Rowan straightened immediately, smoothing her coat, like she was resetting. I'm fine, she said, then looked at me. So that's it? You won't even talk to me? I took a slow breath. My chest hurt.
Not in a dramatic way.
In a quiet, physical way, like a bruise pressed too hard. I'll talk to you, I said, when you can tell me why you're really here without mentioning my success once. Rowan's lips parted, then closed. She stared at me, and I watched her try to find the right combination of words. She couldn't. Finally, she nodded once stiff. Okay, she said, and the coldness was back. I get it. Then she turned and walked out. And I stood there in the doorway for a second, letting the air hit my face, letting my heart slow down, letting myself feel the weird mix of victory and grief that comes when you finally say no to something you once begged for. I know some people are going to read this and think, why didn't you just slam the door? Why didn't you tell her to get lost?
And I get it. I've had that fantasy too.
But real life isn't a neat revenge clip. Real life is your ex showing up with the same face you once kissed, and your body reacting before your brain can catch up. It's having a voice in your head that still wants to believe the best version of them exists, even when the evidence says otherwise. Rowan's biggest issue isn't that she left. People leave relationships. It happens. Rowan's issue is how she left, like I was an accessory she outgrew. She framed my stability as a flaw, then tried to return once that same stability turned into visible success. That's not love. That's opportunism wrapped in pretty words. And the "are you seeing someone?" question? That wasn't curiosity. That was ownership. Like she wanted to check if the shelf space was still reserved for her. I also have to be honest about myself. Part of me wanted her to be genuinely sorry. Not because I want her back, but because it would rewrite the pain into something easier to carry. If she'd said, I was scared, I was selfish, I didn't know how to be a partner, I might have cried, and then maybe I'd feel like the last 2 years weren't just me scraping myself off the floor alone. But she couldn't even get through a conversation without glancing at the press guy like he was a prize. So yes, I set a boundary. And no, it didn't feel empowering in a sparkly way. It felt heavy. Like closing a door on a room I once lived in.
Update. Okay.
So, I posted the original story, the part up to Rowan leaving, because I needed to get it out of my head before it leaked into my work. I did not expect what happened next. First, Rowan didn't just leave. She went directly to Cass. I know this because Cass texted me at 11:47 p.m. while I was still cleaning up the studio, and my feet were aching from standing in heels that I only wore because Nina dared me to dress like a CEO for once. Cass's name popped up on my screen like an old bruise. Cass. That was cruel. I stared at the message for a full 10 seconds, like my brain was buffering. Me. Hi to you too. Cass. Rowan came home crying. You humiliated her. It took everything in me not to reply with something petty. My first impulse was, oh, did she cry? How tragic. But I've learned that if you respond emotionally to people like Cass, they treat it as proof you're unstable. So I wrote, me. I didn't humiliate her. I set a boundary.
Cass. At your launch.
In front of people. You knew she was nervous. I actually laughed out loud at that. Nervous. Rowan, who used to correct waiters like she was their manager. Rowan, who told me I wasn't inspiring enough, was nervous? Me. She showed up uninvited. If she was nervous, she should have texted instead. Cass stopped replying for a bit. Then, Cass, you're enjoying this. That one got under my skin because it was framed like a moral accusation. Like if I didn't immediately deny it, I was proving I was mean. Me. I'm enjoying protecting my peace. If that bothers you, that's your problem. Cass, you always wanted to be better than her.
Me, no.
I wanted to be loved by her. That was the first time I admitted that in writing, and it made my chest hurt. Cass didn't reply after that.
I thought that was the end.
2 days later, Rowan emailed me. Not texted. Not called. Emailed. Like she was applying for a job. Subject line. Can we meet? The email was long. It started with, I'm sorry if I surprised you, which already made my eye twitch because surprised is what you do with balloons, not emotional ambushes. Then she wrote about how she'd been going through a lot, how she'd missed the stability we had, how she'd taken me for granted, and how seeing me thriving made her realize she'd lost something special. I read it twice. The words were technically apologetic. But the focus was still on her feelings and my success, like my pain was a side note. Here's the thing. I wanted to ignore it. I truly did. But then I remembered my own rule. If you don't close the loop, some people keep knocking. And I was tired. I didn't want her hovering around my life, like a ghost at the edge of my work events. So I agreed to meet her for coffee on my terms.
Daytime. Public.
30 minutes. No talking about us like it was an open door. Rowan showed up early. She was wearing a softer outfit than usual, sweater, jeans, hair less perfect. It felt like a costume of humility. When she saw me, she stood up too fast, like she wanted to look eager. Hi, she said, voice small. I sat down across from her and placed my phone face up on the table, not to record her, just as a reminder to myself that I had a life waiting outside this conversation. Rowan's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were pale. Thank you for meeting me, she said. You wanted to talk, I replied. Talk. She swallowed. I've been thinking about you, she began. I didn't react. I just waited. Silence is uncomfortable, and it makes people reveal more than they planned. Rowan exhaled. I messed up, she said. I was selfish. I thought I needed excitement. I thought I needed someone who made me feel. She stopped, eyes flicking up like she was checking if that would make me angry. I thought I needed someone different. I sipped my coffee. It tasted burnt. Rowan rushed on. But I've realized something. I realized you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I set my cup down carefully. Rowan, I said, why are you really here? Her face tightened. I just told you. No, I said. You told me a speech. Rowan's eyes flashed with frustration. I'm here because I miss you. Because I want another chance. I held her gaze. Why now? Her mouth opened. Closed. She looked down at her hands. Because
I saw you, she admitted. Because you saw my launch, I said.
Because I saw you thriving, she corrected, like it sounded better. And that made you want me back, I said, flatly. Rowan's cheeks flushed. That's not fair. I've missed you for months. Then why didn't you reach out months ago? I asked. Before you knew I had press at my door? Rowan's eyes went watery. I was ashamed, she whispered. That almost landed. Almost. But then she added, and I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I leaned back slightly. So you protected yourself, I said. Again. Rowan's face crumpled. I'm trying now. I believe you're trying, I said, and I meant it. But trying doesn't undo what happened. Rowan reached across the table like she was going to touch my hand. I pulled my hand back before she could. Her eyes widened like I'd slapped her. Okay, she said quickly. Okay. Saudi. I took a breath. My heart felt steady now. Not numb, steady. Rowan, you said I was holding you back. You made me feel like my stability was boring. I built this life without you. I cried on my own floors. I worked myself sick. I learned how to value myself without someone else validating me. Rowan's tears slipped down her cheeks. I know, she whispered. And now, I continued, you want to come back because you see the finished product. But you don't get the finished product if you walked out during the construction. Rowan's mouth trembled. So that's it, she said, voice breaking. You're just done? I paused because this was the moment that mattered. The moment I'd once feared. The moment where you either shrink or you stand. I'm done being available to someone who only wants me when I'm impressive, I said. Rowan's face hardened suddenly, like a switch flipped. So you're punishing me, she snapped, the softness evaporating. You're making me grovel because you like having the power now. There it was. The real Rowan. The one who couldn't tolerate not being centered. I blinked slowly. I'm not making you grovel, I said. You're choosing to. Because you came here expecting to be forgiven. Rowan's eyes narrowed. You think you're so evolved now. I smiled slightly, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. I think I'm done arguing with someone who turns boundaries into insults, I said. Rowan sat back, breathing hard, like she was trying not to explode in a coffee shop. Fine, she hissed. Enjoy your little empire. Thank you, I said, and my voice was calm. I will. I stood up, slid a 20 under my cup without thinking, and walked out before my legs could start shaking. That night, Cass blocked me on everything. Rowan didn't contact me again. And something in me, something I didn't even realize was still waiting, finally relaxed. After that coffee meeting, I expected the emotional crash. I expected to lie in bed replaying it, imagining alternate versions where Rowan apologized correctly, where she understood, where she didn't lash out at the end. But instead, I felt oddly clean, like I'd finally washed something off my skin that had been there for years. A week later, I ran into Rowan's mother at the farmer's market. She was holding a bunch of lilies and smiled at me politely, the way adults do when they're not sure what side they're supposed to be on. Layla, she said gently. How are you? I'm good, I replied. And for the first time, I didn't say it to be polite. I meant it. Her eyes softened. Rowan mentioned you're doing very well. I felt the familiar temptation to shrink, to deflect. Instead, I nodded. Yeah, I said. I am. She hesitated. I'm sorry things ended badly, she said. Me too, I answered. She nodded once, then turned back to her shopping like that was the end of the conversation. No drama. No guilt. Just reality. Later that month, Nina and Priya and I signed our biggest contract yet. We celebrated with cheap champagne in paper cups at the studio because we were too tired to go out. Nina raised her cup and said, to Layla, for not taking back the person who didn't deserve her. Priya added, to Layla, for not confusing nostalgia with love. I laughed, but my eyes stung. Not from sadness. From relief. I thought about the version of me who used to sit on the couch waiting for Rowan to come home, the version of me who thought love was something you earned by being useful and understanding and endlessly patient. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her, you're going to build a life so full you won't recognize your own loneliness anymore. You're going to stop begging people to see you. You're going to become someone you can't abandon. Rowan tried to come back after I found success. And the wild part is, I didn't need to make sure she knew she lost her chance. Life did that the moment she realized my door wasn't open just because she knocked. I just kept it closed. Rowan is the kind of person who confuses desire with entitlement. She doesn't just miss you, she misses how you made her feel safe without requiring her to be accountable. And the timing tells the whole story. If she had reached out quietly, months earlier, with an actual apology that centered your pain instead of her regret, I'd be sitting here calling this a tragedy with nuance. But she showed up at your launch like it was a red carpet event she deserved access to, and that's not romance. That's opportunism wearing eyeliner. Her "I'm proud of you" line is especially gross to me. Not because people can't be proud of exes, but because she didn't earn the right to say it like a blessing. She wasn't in the trenches with you. She didn't hold your hand when you were scared. She wasn't there when you were building something fragile. She wanted to stroll in at the shiny part and claim emotional credit. Then, when you didn't melt into gratitude, she flipped to "you're punishing me" and "enjoy your little empire." That's the mask slipping. That's who she is when she doesn't get her way. Cass deserves her own paragraph of side-eye. Cass is the classic enabler friend who frames boundaries as cruelty because it threatens the little narrative they've built. The "you're enjoying this" text is such a manipulator's move, trying to make you defend your character instead of holding Rowan accountable. Cass wasn't protecting Rowan. Cass was protecting the comfort of her own role in Rowan's life. Blocking you afterward is honestly a gift. Let trash take itself out, quietly. And you, Layla? You did what most people struggle to do. You refused to negotiate your worth with someone who already showed you their terms. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You didn't do a dramatic monologue for revenge points. You asked one simple question: why now? And you stayed steady long enough for the truth to show itself. That's power. Not the loud, cinematic kind. The real kind. The kind that looks like a calm no in a coffee shop while your heart is still learning it's safe. Rowan lost her chance the day she walked out and didn't look back. You just made sure you didn't reopen the wound to let her step inside it again.